All right, everyone, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to explore a story that's really woven into the very fabric of industrial America. It's the story of how a culture, one that was literally erased from the map of Europe, managed to rebuild itself through food, faith, and, you guessed it, festivals. We're talking about the incredible journey of Polish immigrants, and honestly, it's a perfect story for us to unpack together. I want you to picture this for a second. It's Easter Monday in Buffalo, New York, and the air is just electric with the sound of polka music. You've got the thunder of the drums, the squeeze of the accordions. It feels ancient, right? This is Dingus Day. You can smell the hot pierogi everywhere, and all you see is this sea of red and white. This isn't just a parade, it's a statement. But when you're standing right there in the middle of it all, you have to wonder, how did this get here? How on earth did the food, the music, these traditions from tiny Polish villages, how did they not only survive that massive journey to America, but then go on to thrive for generations, even after the language started to fade? Well, that's the big question we're going to dig into. And the answer really lies in this powerful idea called performed heritage. The concept is pretty simple when you break it down. Culture isn't some dusty artifact you put in a museum. No, it's a living, breathing thing. And it survives because people do it. They perform it. They keep it alive every time they cook a certain dish or march in a parade or repeat a sacred ritual. This idea, it's the key to this whole story. So to really understand why this performance of heritage became so absolutely vital, we have to go back. We need to take a look at the world these immigrants were so desperate to get away from. So get this. For 123 years, starting way back in the late 1700s, Poland as a country, it just didn't exist. It was literally wiped off the map. It was partitioned, carved up like a cake by its powerful neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Being Polish back then meant you were living under a foreign empire, and you were often treated like a second-class citizen in the very land your ancestors had lived on for centuries. And on top of that political nightmare, there was just crushing, unbelievable poverty. Life in the villages was a constant fight to survive, which brings us to this quote from a letter an immigrant sent back home. Wow. It says everything you need to know in just a few words. Back home, work was hard and you starved. In America, the work was brutal, but at least there was bread. You could eat. So you really have this perfect storm of what historians call push factors. Politically, you're oppressed. Culturally, your language is being banned. They're actively trying to erase your identity. And economically, you're starving. For millions of people, coming to America wasn't just about finding a better opportunity. It was the last resort. It was the only choice left. So when they finally got to America, they didn't just scatter and try to blend in. No, they did something truly remarkable. They immediately started rebuilding the world they had lost, creating these vibrant, totally self-sufficient neighborhoods we now call Little Polands. And they went where the work was. They poured into the industrial heartland, the cities that desperately needed their labor for the steel mills, the coal mines, the factories. Chicago basically became the capital of Polish America, but you saw these massive thriving communities pop up in Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Milwaukee, all the big industrial centers. And this right here, this is the secret sauce to their survival. At the absolute heart of every single one of these neighborhoods was the parish, the church. But it was so much more than just a place to pray. It was the school, the community hall, the bank, the social club. It was the entire village just picked up and transplanted into the middle of an American city. This quote just perfectly captures the emotional power of that. I mean, can you imagine? You're thousands of miles from home, you don't speak the language, people look at you funny, and then you walk into a church and you hear your own language. For that 1 hour, you weren't an outsider anymore. You could just breathe. You were home. And the scale of this effort is just staggering. Look at that number, over 800. That's not a typo. Polish immigrants built more than 800 of these parishes all across the country. This wasn't just a few random communities. This was a vast, intentional network designed to preserve their culture, their faith, and their way of life. Okay, so we've got these communities set up. Now, how exactly did they perform their heritage inside them? Well, it really comes down to 3 key anchors that held their identity together: food, family, and festivals. Let's start with food, because of course, food was way more than just fuel. It was a time machine. It was a direct link to the past. The recipes they carried in their heads were a way to literally recreate home. So pierogi, kielbasa, those amazing paczki donuts, they weren't just meals, they were rituals. And the biggest ritual of all was Viglia, the huge Christmas Eve supper. a total performance of faith and family. And this quote right here just gets right to the heart of it. The spoken language might start to fade after a generation or two, but the muscle memory of how to make pierogies just like your mom taught you, that stays. The smell of the sausage, the feel of the dough, that became a language that every generation could still understand. Next up is family. And the family wasn't just a family, it was an economic survival unit. It was totally normal to have 3 generations, plus boarders from back home, all packed under one roof. Every single person's paycheck went into one pot. The women were the anchors, the CEOs of the household, really. And the grandparents? They were the librarians. They were the ones who passed down the stories, the language, the prayers. And finally, they took their culture out into the streets. They performed it loudly and proudly. It started small, simple parish picnics, public blessings of Easter baskets. But over time, those small events grew and grew until they became these massive festivals like Dungus Day. They went from being quiet little rituals to huge public celebrations that basically announced, we are here, we are Polish American, and we are proud. And that journey from quiet survival to public pride, that's really the final incredible chapter of this story. It's a journey from being at the very bottom of the ladder to becoming a really powerful and influential part of America. I mean, just look at this transformation. They went from working those brutal 12-hour shifts in the mills to becoming leaders in the labor unions, from being called ugly names to having real political clout, from tiny parish picnics to citywide festivals that draw thousands. This isn't just a story of assimilation, it's a story of empowerment. And that brings us right back to where we started, doesn't it? That Dungus Day parade, with all its noise and its joy and its polka, it's not just a party. Once you know the history, you see it's a testament. Every plate of pierogi, every single note from an accordion, it's a celebration of generations of struggle and sacrifice and just incredible resilience. So I'll leave you with this final thought as you start your discussion. If heritage is really this ongoing conversation between the past and the present, a story that we keep performing and retelling, what story is your family telling?